Hi, I'm Nita Zakharenko. I've given plenty of technical talks over the past few years, and I'm here to say that this is not one of them. Today, I'm here to talk to you about community. I do want to let you know that the slides are available to download. There are plenty of additional resources throughout, so just download them to follow the links. They are available at nina.to/pyco 2022. So you heard a little bit about me. Who am I? I'm a board member of the Python Software Foundation. I've written software for over a decade. I lead a team of Python Developer Advocates. And if you want to reach out and stay in touch, please follow me on Twitter at NNJA. That's like ninja without the I. So, Python community. I want to tell you a little bit about what the Python community means to me. I started out my career as a Java developer. I didn't really know about open source. I didn't know about meetups. I didn't know about community. I didn't know about events. My job was just a means to an end. I didn't do much fun or creative programming. And honestly, I felt like I was falling out of love with tech. I had a lot of really bad experience in the industry. And then I went to PyCon US in 2013 because I heard good things, and that changed everything for me. People were so kind. They were so welcoming. I was afraid that people would call me out as a newbie because at that time, I spent most of my time writing Java. I had only written a few small scripts in Python, and instead folks were really welcoming. And that experience changed my life. It changed my career. I've made some lifelong friends. And I've also been elected to the board of directors of the PSF. But most importantly, I fell in love with programming again. And this is one of my favorite all-time photos from PyCon. It's in 2019 with folks who work at Adafruit and some of the PyLadies Tokyo organizers. But a lot has changed since 2019. Every time I look at that picture, I think about how close our faces are and how we're not wearing any masks. We are now in the third year of a global pandemic. And I don't know about you, but I used to daydream about things going back to normal. But now with the new variants, we know that's not possible. This might be our new normal. And we need to figure out how to adapt in our own ways. One way that you might do that is by revisiting in-person conferences. I recently went to PyCon US in Salt Lake City. It was my first conference in almost 3 years, and it was the same for many others. And I will say that it was stressful. Traveling there was stressful, being there was stressful, but I was really glad to be there. It's kind of funny because we had all forgotten how to socialize. Everybody kind of felt like, a baby deer trying to learn how to walk again and how to interact with each other in person. But the flip side to that was I did notice that people really valued in-person interaction more. When I used to go to conferences before the pandemic, I felt like 2/3 of the room in a talk were on their laptops. They were working, they were checking emails. And at this PyCon in 2022, I noticed that the whole room, for the most part, with the exception of a very small handful of people, they were paying attention in the talks. They really wanted that in-person interaction, that in-person connection. And I feel like PyCon US also had a great policy for safety. There was 2/3 of the crowd with twice the space, and they had a very strict mask policy that they weren't enforcing. So here's a photo from PyCon 2022, now with 100% more masks. But it's important to think about what your own comfort zone is. Not everyone is ready to return to in-person events, and that's okay. There are a lot of difficulties involved. There are financial difficulties, there are health difficulties, there are visa issues. I know that a lot of folks weren't able to travel to the US because the visa process in their country was so backed up. I did go to a local non-Python conference a few months after PyCon, and it was really crowded. And even though folks were wearing masks for the most part, it just made me really uncomfortable. And I felt bad about it, but I had to leave. And once I left and I was kind of able to calm down, I realized that I did the right thing. And these situations, we're all learning from scratch, and you have to be kind to yourself. You have to re-engage slowly, because it's not worth pushing it. You really need to respect your comfort zone. Many of us have also been dealing with struggles during the pandemic. I've lost family members. Many of you have lost friends and loved ones. You've lost jobs, you've lost income, and you should know that it's not just you. According to the World Health Organization, there has been a 25% increase in anxiety and depression worldwide. You might want to think about this as part of a spoon theory, your experience. So the spoon theory is a metaphor, and it's used to describe the amount of mental and physical energy that a person has available for activities just of daily life and for their productive tasks. You can kind of think of it like a daily capacity. It's especially been used to explain the reduced amount of energy that might result from something like a disability, chronic pain, chronic illness. And you can imagine the spoons being a measurement of that energy. During COVID, many of us are actively experiencing symptoms that may feel like a chronic condition. Symptoms of depression, symptoms of anxiety, chronic stress. And you want to take this into account when you're planning your day. Even if it's not something that you had an issue with before, you might be finding yourself with a lot less energy, and you may not have enough spoons to get everything you wanted done. If you're constantly using up all of your spoons, you risk burning out. You really want to monitor your energy level, be compassionate to yourself. We're living in different times, and many of us have lost access to the ways that we used to recharge our batteries. There are 6 conditions that can lead to burnout, according to a book on the topic from probably 15 or 20 years ago. I really enjoyed reading it. And the authors present these 6 conditions that can lead to burnout. And I want to say that they can lead to burnout either at work or in a community. The first is a lack of control. So not having a lot of say in your work. The next is a core values conflict between you and the group. Maybe you feel like folks aren't behaving ethically, or they're not being truthful, or what are there other core values that you have that you feel like you might not share with the group that you're in? You may feel like you are getting rewarded insufficiently. So you are undercompensated, you're underappreciated, you're taken for granted. There could be unfairness in your environment, people who are treated poorly, you being treated poorly, your management playing favorites, promotions happening behind closed doors for reasons that aren't clear. And you might be experiencing a breakdown of community. Your colleagues patronizing you, nobody to talk to, no avenue for feedback. And the last condition is work overload. Too much work, work that is too urgent, too complicated. I do want to point out that only one of these 6 items is working too much. If any of this is resonating with you, I really highly recommend reading a blog post by Kieran Tai on burnout. I read it a few years ago, and it was really eye-opening for me. I want to say that burnout in tech is a lot more common than you would think. Anecdotally, I think it affects folks who are underrepresented and neurodiverse more. And it is worth so much more to prevent burnout than it is to try to recover from it, because it's a long journey. But you have to remember that it's okay to not be okay. We are not robots. What's going on in the world is stressful. It's confusing. Feels like you might not have a lot of control over it. So you need to take time for self-care. I recommend activities with friends, even if those activities are outdoors to be COVID safe. You can learn new things, new hobbies, and take breaks from the news, especially lately. It's good to stay up to date, but you can't be in the cycle of constantly engaging with the news cycle and constantly doom scrolling, because it's not great for your mental health. Now, only if you can, if you feel like you have those spoons to spare, what are some ways that you can support the community? You can give back and volunteer, but you really want to do so carefully. You don't want to push yourself past your limits. You can contribute. There are many opportunities to volunteer if you have those spare spoons. You can contribute to open source software. If you speak a language other than English, you can contribute to documentation and translations. I think this is a really great one, because as you're translating the docs, you're going to be learning something new and picking up new skills. You can volunteer at conferences and events, just like this one. You can give a talk at a conference or meetup, either in person or online. I wrote a guide to giving tech talks, a 7-part series a few years ago that folks have told me it's helped them break through and give their first talk. And the link to that is nina.to/talks. Although I do need to update it for giving remote talks. And lastly, you can organize your own event, but I will say this is very, very hard. Being an organizer of PyCascades 2 years ago, I really got to see the amount of time, effort, money that goes into putting on an event, either in person or online. They are equally challenging in their own ways. Open source projects and communities, there are so many projects in Python that have really kind, caring folks that are around, and they're open to helping beginners get started. One of my favorites is CircuitPython. It's a variant of Python that runs on microcontrollers. I use CircuitPython to make the LED earrings in that picture, and those earrings run Python. If you want to see the source code, it's linked at the bottom of the slide. There are also Jupyter notebooks, Core Python if you're more advanced, Python packaging could always use your help, and plenty of other projects. You can also find opportunities for mentorship, especially if you're somebody who's been in the community for quite a while. Find somebody who's just starting out, lend them a hand, share your experience, help them debug. I personally was lucky enough to have many mentors early on, both in my career and when I started speaking, and I wouldn't be here without them. When I went to my first PyCon Canada, so probably a year after my first PyCon US, I had started writing more complex Python programs, and I was working on something, but I was really stuck on how to get my app to do the right thing and be more performant. And when I went to sprints at PyCon Canada, I found somebody who was more experienced, who was willing to help me troubleshoot. And they sat down with me and we pair programmed for 2 hours. They showed me everything that I could be doing better. They taught me so much. And I really remember that experience fondly, because I didn't imagine that anybody would be interested in looking at my code for my personal project. And here was somebody who really cared. And throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to do the same for others. It's a really rewarding experience. There's also the Python Software Foundation. I think there's sometimes some confusion in the Python community about what the PSF is. The mission of the Python Software Foundation is to promote, protect, and advance the Python programming language, and to support and facilitate the growth of a diverse and international community of Python programmers. Now, something very important that I want to point out, folks get confused about this on Twitter. So you want to follow at the PSF and not at PSF. At PSF is People for Salmon, and they do get mentioned all the time. And one of the core developers who lives near the foundation recently stopped by to drop off some stickers and some Python books. So thank you, Brett Cannon, for that. Now, a little bit more about what the PSF does. The PSF, it holds the intellectual property rights to PyCon. It maintains licenses. It runs PyCon US. It runs a lot of grant programs for projects, for meetups, for conferences. It supports and maintains the critical infrastructure of Python, like python.org, PyPI, the Python documentation, and it also runs work groups to improve the Python ecosystem. It grants awards. So you might see folks who are PSF fellows and community service awards for folks who are really contributing to the community above and beyond. It's a way to recognize them. And then the board of directors helps guide the foundation. How can you support the PSF? You can volunteer. You can join a work group. Many work groups are available, like the Code of Conduct work group, the Grants work group, Infrastructure work group, Education work group. And you don't need to be a PSF board member to join one of these groups. And the groups have a lot of impact into how those particular programs are run. You can contribute to Python open source, either documentation or code. You can donate. Even a $5 donation helps. You can become a member. So you can work on becoming a member. You can join a mailing list. And we're currently working on making a supporting membership, one that would allow you to vote in the elections, more cost effective for folks who are outside of the US and Europe, or folks who are students and may not be able to afford that contribution. And don't forget to follow the PSF on Twitter for news and announcements. You can also stay in touch with the community. One way to do that is chat. The Python Discord is currently at 350,000 members, up from 100,000 members 2 years ago. There's the Adafruit Discord for CircuitPython and hardware-related chat. There's also the Python at Microsoft Discord if you want to hang out with some of the folks who work on advancing Python at Microsoft, and some of the folks on the product teams who work on those products. There are also quite a few community Slacks and, of course, Twitter. Now, I would really love to hear about how you've stayed in touch with the Python community. One of the really nice things about this conference here is gather.town. I'm looking forward to checking it out after my talk, so I'm going to drop in for a few minutes. But I walked around the virtual platform and I was just so impressed with the stage, the souvenirs, the booths from the sponsors where you could walk up to the little tables in this virtual world and explore resources that those sponsors have shared, PDFs, documents, ways to learn more about their products. And I know that folks have been hanging out in there in between talks. I love that so much. But if there are other ways that you stay in touch with the Python community, please share with me. Tweet your stories, tweet your photos at NNJA. So what is next? Well, you want to be kind to each other. You want to be patient with others. You don't know their home situation. Maybe they are homeschooling their kids. Maybe they are taking care of a sick parent. Maybe they are someone who struggles with finding enough spoons to do all the things that they've committed to. And I think it's really important to be patient. You want to find ways to support others if you have the bandwidth, but if you don't, that's okay too. You need to figure out what's right for you. And most importantly, I think you want to assume good intent unless proven otherwise. I think so many of us we're on edge, we are stressed, we are overworked, we're doing too much at work and at home. And when somebody does something we don't necessarily agree with, it's easy to just jump into getting upset, jump into getting mad, assume that that change or request or comment was something negative or something that affects our character. But really, if you assume good intent from the get-go, chances are you'll have more bandwidth to see that you might have been proven wrong. Maybe this person assumed something positive, and by reacting so negatively, you're not giving them the opportunity to connect with you. Check in on those quiet folks, folks that don't speak up in meetings anymore, folks that used to participate in your community, they used to be really active, but they don't anymore. Maybe folks who haven't turned their camera on in meetings in a while, or haven't responded to your emails or your text messages. Check in on them and make sure they're okay. I feel like the virtual environment that we're all living in lets those folks who do tend to withdraw when things go wrong really just blend in and be forgotten about. And it's important that we check in on each other. Also, make sure that you thank the organizers of PyCon Colombia. I know from experience that organizing a remote conference isn't easy. There is so much coordination with speakers, with volunteers, software is complicated with vendors, and they've worked really hard to put on this amazing event. Please make sure that you thank them. Let them know that you appreciate your effort, that you appreciate their effort, and share stories of what made the conference special for you. I'm sure that they would really, really appreciate hearing that. Now, I do want to say that over the years, many folks have shared talks with the Python community about depression, about burnout, about neurodivergence. I've compiled a list of all the ones that I have found here, listed mostly chronologically. I do want to say I haven't had a chance to watch them all yet, but I would like to. And keep in mind that these are just talks from our community, but they are from folks who are based all over the world. These talks are given at PyCon UK, PyCon Africa, PyCon Australia. And I hope that this shows you that if you're struggling with any of these things, that you are not alone. So let's go through some of these. And there's Russell Keith McGee's talk, I Am Not a Doctor. There are, I think this is my favorite title altogether. Things That Are Tired, Uggs, Segways, and You. From Kathleen, Avoiding Burnout and Other Essentials of Open Source Self-Care. From Jackson, Tackling Burnout and Strategies for Self-Care. From Eric, Healthy Minds in a Healthy Community. From John, Neurodiversity and Technology. From Jessica, a keynote that she gave at DjangoCon, and I was lucky enough to be in the audience for that, about burnout and balance. That really resonated with me. From Aaron, When Your Wetware Has Too Many Threads. It's a talk about ADHD. I also saw this one in person, and he's got a lot of great suggestions for navigating life with ADHD and a lot of tips and tricks that he uses to be more productive. From Tracy, this was a keynote, anxiety, self-advocacy, and promoting yourself. From Chloe, depression in the workplace, let's talk. From Kuda, how to avoid burnout. From Jenna, supporting engineers with mental health issues. And lastly, from Jay, diversity in neurodiversity. And again, if you download the slides, you can follow all the links. Tweet at me if I missed any talks that you think should be on this list but aren't. I'd also love to learn more about the resources that you know about to have these discussions out loud, especially talks from folks in communities outside of Python. I do want to say that I think we will come out better on the other side if we go through this together by supporting each other, because the Python community is stronger together, and we'll get through this. All right, thanks so much. Please tweet at me, follow me on Twitter if you have any thoughts about what we've spoken about today. I believe we'll be taking some questions after this talk, and I'll be hanging out in gather.town if it's open afterwards to chat with some of you folks. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.